Are you tired of the same old streaming options? Introducing Myco, the revolutionary Web3 content platform where you can not only watch films, TV shows, user-generated content, live events, and listen to podcasts, but earn from them too. Myco commissions and produces content that connects and empowers both viewers and creators in a fully decentralized video ecosystem. With live monetization, crowdfunding, NFT gating, and even the opportunity for fractional ownership of content, Myco is changing the game. Myco, join the conversation and start earning today. Download the app from the Apple and Google Play app stores.
Telecast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to this week's Telecast. On this week's show, Jonathan Shalit, OBE, chairman and founder of InterTalent, one of the UK's leading talent management companies, joins me alongside Carlotta Rossi Spencer, head of format acquisitions for Banijay Group, the world's largest independent content producer. Peter White from Deadline joins us from Los Angeles under curfew as he updates us on the latest Hollywood TV news, and from productions with drones to countries marketing themselves as safe havens for TV production, and genres flourishing under lockdown. K7 Media's Girts Licis discusses the opportunities in TV brought about by distancing. It's all coming up in this week's Telecast. So my guests on this week's show are responsible for managing some of the world's best-known talent and TV brands. Jonathan Shalit, OBE, is chairman and founder of InterTalent. Widely recognised as one of the best-connected figures in the entertainment business, he is listed by London's Evening Standard as the most influential in his field. The scores of household names InterTalent has worked with include Lorraine Kelly OBE, John Bon Jovi, Judge Rinder, Sting, Charlotte Church, Dame Joan Collins, and Spice Girl Mel B. As the nominated management company of Simon Cowell's global TV franchises, InterTalent has also represented winners of both America and Britain's Got Talent and X Factor. Carlotta Rossi Spencer is head of format acquisitions for Banijay Group and is responsible for leading unscripted brands Temptation Island, Survivor, Wife Swap, The Secret Life of Four-Year-Olds, The Legacy, and Fort Boyard. Working across the group's 16 territories, Carlotta acquires unscripted formats with global appeal for the company. Overseeing the process from industry analysis to negotiation and completion, she also seeks out external co-development and co-production opportunities. In leading operations in unscripted acquisitions, Carlotta also provides high-level consultancy to the group's production labels on the local rollout of all the formats they acquire. So welcome to the show, Jonathan Shalit, OBE, and Carlotta Rossi Spencer. How are you doing?
Hello, Justin. Thank you.
I'm very good, thank you.
So Jonathan, coming to you first, we've spoken on Telecast at length about the current and future implications of the pandemic from a TV production and sales perspective. But what we haven't talked about is a vital area for TV, which is talent. Tell us how your business and the business of talent management has changed over the last couple of months.
I think most people consider their business sector unique. The truth is, in a pandemic like this, every business sector becomes fairly similar in the challenges. So when you use the word talent, in truth, whilst we're dealing with individuals so that they have emotions and one has to support and give them care and understanding of their personal challenges they're in the same predicament as the rest of the economy. What they're offering isn't being bought because demand has gone. But that also applies to people who own restaurants, people who are selling movie tickets, people who have theme parks, people who have hotel rooms, people who've got airline tickets. The demand's gone. The difference, of course, for an individual is that most talent don't earn as much money as the country think. So therefore, they haven't got the same amount of savings. And they live very much on the work they get on an annual basis. So when they go into it, and they're used to not often having work for a few months because that's the nature of being talent. But what they're not used to is having their careers decimated and work completely drying up without knowledge of knowing when more work will happen. And at the same time as the income stopping completely dead in its tracks in many people's cases, their outgoings, whether it be their families, their children, their partners, their mortgages, their financial commitments to their parents, whatever it might be, continues. So they're faced with both immense worry at home, but also immense worry as to when they can get back to pursuing the career they love.
We talked about scripted, but it's also relevant for unscripted TV production as well. Productions delayed by 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever that might be. Obviously, there's a huge amount of scrambling going on right now, particularly in the UK, but all over the world when it comes to getting back to TV production. A lot of this also is reliant on talent being available. Now, how do you prioritize what your talent does? Because it obviously has a huge knock-on effect for TV productions as well.
Well, I think you've raised two issues there. The first is about TV productions being up and running, and the judgment for that is a question of a safe environment in which to work, which is no different than whether you can go to a restaurant or you can go back to an office or you can go into a shop. In terms of talent's availability, again, it's like any company who is selling a service or a product. There's only so much to go around. When anybody comes back into their marketplace, they're going to have a build-up of people wanting their business. And I think an acting talent is no different. When we come out of the pandemic, if there is a sort of, I guess, a pile-up of job opportunities at the same time, as you say, we'll have to prioritize. But equally, there are only so many studios available in the UK. So it's not like every single production can be up and running on the same day, because productions have also got to book studios, and film directors and television directors have also got to be available. So it's not going to be a question of the day the pandemic comes to an end, everything goes back to normal. So I think that'll actually be a journey we go on in terms of different opportunities coming online at a different time.
Yeah. And presumably you have voiceover talent as well. And have they been pretty much able to carry on working?
Well, I mean, ITV have publicly stated their advertising has been down 42% in the first month of the pandemic. So that relates to voiceover work as well, in the sense that less money has been spent on advertising. So yes, whilst there has been some voiceover work, it's been very small at the moment. I mean, all advertising has been very limited. So I think voiceover work's been hit just as badly.
So your first story this week concerns the importance of TV journalism. Talk us through that.
I think what's happened, and I work closely with Good Morning Britain, representing both Susanna Reid and Lorraine Kelly. And there's been debate about the interviewing style of Good Morning Britain and the fact that various senior politicians have refused to come on because they don't like the kind of questions they're asked and don't think they've been treated fairly. I am totally dumbfounded that any senior politician would not want to go on one of the biggest television shows in England to communicate their message to the public. When I hear they can't cope and don't like the robust interview style of Piers Morgan in particular, Good Morning Britain has got two phenomenal interviewers, Piers Morgan, Susanna Reid. They both have very distinctive styles. Susanna Reid has been a very important news journalist for the BBC for many years before she came over to Good Morning Britain. And of course, Piers Morgan joined her. Piers Morgan is very robust, very forthright, and people kind of see him coming because he's straight at you. Susanna's a bit more, I guess, strategic. She starts off gently and then comes in with a killer blow. So actually, you've got two phenomenal interviewers. And you've of course got lovely Lorraine Kelly, who everybody adores, wants to be their mother, sister, grandmother, aunt, sister, you name it, daughter, who appears incredibly gentle. But again, a lady steeped in experience in journalism. So between the three of them on Good Morning Britain, you've got a phenomenal interview team. And I think every government secretary of state and the prime minister should allow themselves to be interviewed with those three people. And absolutely, they'll ask questions those secretaries of state and the prime minister don't want to be asked. But in the absence of anybody else asking these questions and not holding the politicians to account, it now falls to journalists to be the government's opposition, which is not how it should be, because clearly the government's opposition should be the elected opposition. But the way our system's working at the moment, the elected opposition aren't getting an opportunity to be the opposition. So it falls to journalists, or journalists have become the opposition by circumstance.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that one develops. I think you're right. I think, the public expects their politicians to be able to be held to account and appear on a pretty regular basis. So obviously great work being done at Good Morning Britain there. Carlotta, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on the show. So we were talking last week about the resumption of production on Temptation Island, which is obviously a Banijay show. Can you tell us a little more about plans to restart production on this and any of your other formats at the moment?
Sure. Temptation Island is a great story to tell. There's a few territories that are currently working on it. It will come back between the end of this year, beginning of next year, depending on which territories. I will just give you a list of the ones that need to shoot between July and September, which are mainly Spain, Finland, Germany, Holland, and I am waiting to see what happens in the States because, of course, the States were ready to shoot in March.
Right.
As you can imagine, everything got stopped, but being ready to shoot in March meant they had the couples, they had the singles, they had everyone on board already. They're just waiting to see when they can go and shoot and in Maui, where they have been shooting the past 2 seasons. The other territories are all scheduling everything right now. The differences are where they're shooting. So very quickly, just to give you an example, Spain, which needs to start shooting around July, are probably going to the Dominican Republic, where we basically have a hub there. Right. The only reason why they still haven't left is only because of the flights. The rest is all good. Dominican Republic is clean in the sense of they have no cases. They have basically the virus is not present there anymore, and they've given the go for us to shoot. It's a matter of getting there. It should be okay. If it's not, of course, they do have a backup, and that will be in Spain. Okay. But they will shoot because that will air on Mediaset. It was an immense success the first season that aired, and it was at the end of January that it started airing, and it was great. The other shows are all probably being shot within Europe. So Germany will probably go to Croatia, so that and the rest are ongoing. So I think it is a great story to tell, just because, yes, we went through a hard time, all of us, but Temptation Island is a great brand, and it is one of our top brands, as you can imagine, one of our top formats. Yeah. We're not going to change the nature of it. What is going to change, what is going to be the main concern is the security and the health. So we are implementing protocols in all the productions, and those protocols go from testing, continuous testing, so pre-testing and quarantine, and then continuous testing, having doctors on set, having precautions with the crews. The cast is in the same villa, the singles are in the same villa, so that doesn't really change anything because they're already in a very isolated place.
They've all been quarantined together, right? The cast and the crew.
Exactly. So, and the rest is Temptation Island, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the biggest one. Of course, other shows have gone air in the meantime. Luckily, so we've had, for example, Wife Swap in Italy, which is doing really well. Beat the Star and ProSieben in Germany. The Free European Song Contest in Germany, which was great. It was the right. The Euro Song Contest couldn't go on air, and then we did the Free European Song Contest, which was great. Yeah. So we did a few shows in the meantime.
Well, that's amazing that you've remained so active. I mean, yes. Obviously, a lot of the industry has been in pretty much complete shutdown. And I guess, without going into detail, but insurance obviously seems to be the real roadblock to lots of productions going ahead. So presumably, you haven't had those problems on Temptation Island and the other formats that you've been producing.
Well, yes, it is, and you're right. It is a big part of what we do. I think what we have found is that we work closely with the broadcasters on that. So if the broadcasters are checking and saying, yes, we're doing the show and commissioning the show. That's when we work together on how to get that done in the best possible way and how to protect our production and the fact that they need to air. So it's a collaboration.
Okay. All right. And obviously massively in the interest of these broadcasters, because I'm assuming Temptation Island for many of these is one of their biggest shows, as well as being your biggest brands as well. We've spoken on previous shows as well about the types of shows that are doing particularly well during this period of isolation for us all. And we've seen competition shows doing very well, and obviously reality competitions such as Temptation Island. I mean, going forward, has the pandemic changed the kind of formats that you're now looking for the next 6 months and year?
I think we all need to go back to normality, and we all need to go back to something that is comforting and that we know and that we can watch, kind of like calming ourselves. So Temptation Island is a great example because it's not a family watch per se, but it is something that can involve more members of the family at different times because of, Temptation Island is about emotions more than competition or anything else. It is about people going through tough times and wanting to test those relations, something that we can all relate. I think especially after a lockdown, that will be interesting because we've all been tested negatively or positively during this time, with all our either being single or in couples. It's been a great test for everyone.
Yeah.
So the things I am looking for are, the big entertainment shows that can bring, that's why you're referring to competition shows and reality, big competition shows. Those are fun. They're just fun. They bring the family together. We know that, for example, Wipeout is coming back, and Wipeout is one of those titles that just gathers people in front of the TV just to have fun. So I think it is about having fun, and it is about relaxing, and it's not about the big social issues. We've had those moments where we had to go through those formats that bring us, straight to what's happening in reality and politics, and we're going to stay away, but that's a normal human reaction to what has happened.
So Carlotta, your first story is an interesting regional take on the streaming boom. Obviously, we've seen massive uptick in streaming adopted right across the board. You've got an interesting regional take on that.
Sure. Of course. I mean, the worldwide streamers, we can have a whole talk and hours about talking about that. But I think what's interesting to watch and continue watching and study is what happens in the Nordics. All the 4 Nordic territories are in a great place just because they're leading the way that SVOD is penetrating into the market. And that is interesting. It's interesting because on one hand, of course, they have the conditions for that to happen. So one is very fast broadband, and some other territories don't have that high penetration of broadband and that fast broadband. So that's, of course, the technology needs to be there. One other thing is the adoption of the English language, and also the fact that they tend to be high spending as a society, and they are continuously thirsty for entertainment. I mean, for example, in our group, we have been producing a lot for the linear channels, new shows that are coming out of the Nordic territories, new ideas, but also a lot for the local and the international SVODs. So it gives you a sense that that's a market in general, like a region to look at when you want to learn about how SVODs grow. They have been working really well there. I mean, if you look at numbers, the SVOD accounts now for 80% of the Nordic home video, which is massive.
Wow.
Some studies say it will be one of the first regions where you will see basically the switch of more people being on SVOD, still having linear, still, getting content from the linear, which is, of course, what interests us as a group. But at the same time, there will be a switch. Yeah. And so we need to look at that. Of course, their main clients and the main platforms still is Netflix, which has reached almost its maximum there. It's Viaplay, which is local. HBO Nordic as well. Apple TV Plus has entered third quarter of 2019, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, Netflix Plus has to still enter, which is imminent, I guess. So that will be something. That's why I find it interesting, because we're all looking to the States, but let's look what happens in Europe. Let's see what is happening. And that is a model to look at, both from a viewer point of view, to see how our fellow viewers are watching TV and how they are replicating some schemes and not others, because we're not all the same. But at the same time, as an industry, we're producers. We are working a lot with Viaplay in the Nordics, luckily, both unscripted and unscripted. And at the same time, it is something, what happens when there is the real switch? What happens when more people are in those platforms? Will that change the behaviors? We've seen this with COVID, unfortunately, all being locked down. Some behaviors have changed, but we need to be careful in not falling into the trap of saying everything is changing. We just have to cater to one specific kind of platform. That's not the case. We're still here to produce entertainment, and production of entertainment means everything, as long as it's strong and it's localized when it has to be localized. And in my case, for example, when I look at third party, there are things that we do pick up because they're very strong formats on the fundamentals, and we know that we can adapt those. So I think, in general, I think it is a region to look at as, one that is going steadfastly towards something that might happen in the rest of Europe, but not necessarily at the same speed.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's really interesting, actually. Just looking at the Nordics as a trailblazer, if you like, to look at consumer behavior and trends. So
Absolutely.
It's not only consumption of content, there are obviously fantastic production companies all over the Nordics. We all know about Nordic Noir and the change that really affected over the past few years when it comes to the scripted industry.
Exactly.
Who would have thought 3-4 years ago we'd be watching Danish drama on linear TV in the UK, for example, and of course all over the world. And it's not only about Nordic Noir. There's going to be a whole load of new formats, both scripted and unscripted, coming out from those territories. So it's a market that we should definitely keep tabs on. So fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Jonathan, your second story concerns the tentative return of sport, cinema, theatres, public gatherings for entertainment. But it's not without some opposition from scientists and medical experts.
I mean, clearly, when people gather en masse in public places, people are going to be up close with each other, or closer than they are at the moment when they're in their homes or walking in parks with 2 meters between them, which therefore increases the spread of the virus. Now, the question is, what kind of country are we? Are we a country where central government controls our activities and what we do with a ruthless rod of iron? Are we a dictatorial, army-driven state where instruction comes to the top and you do what you're told? Or are we a free country where we make decisions as to what we do? I think we're a free country within reason, where we have to balance common sense, intelligence with government guidelines. Now, clearly, if we see a situation when people come back gathering publicly, illness gets more serious, the numbers go up, and suddenly the hospitals are starting to get too many people, the government has to come back with draconian measures. But unless people want to enjoy themselves, people need to get out. People need to get their emotions and their happiness back. People need to go out and spend money to have the economy operate. So not allowing people, and a great part of that is sport and entertainment of various kinds, and not allowing people to do that harms the welfare or the mental welfare of people, and also harms the economy, and also harms the marketplace. So I think there needs to be some leniency of people being, or some flexibility, being empowered to make the decision as they want what they want to do. Now, equally, if these public places do open and you do have gatherings, staff, of course, have to go and work there. I think staff should have the right to say no without risking and losing their job. So equally, there has to be fairness. Like, if people want to go to a public place, whether it be staff, whether it be members of the public who enjoy the public place, they should be allowed to. If you want to go to a theatre and sit near someone you don't know and to watch a show, you should be allowed to make that decision.
Yeah, and so you're advocating that loosening of regulations around public gatherings as soon as possible.
I'm advocating freedom of choice without the people that have to work at those venues feeling they have to be there, they don't want to be there. I'm saying the infection rate is low enough that we haven't got the NHS overburdened. In the same, we have a flu virus every year in winter and hospital admissions go up. So long as this is contained within that kind of structure, then I think we have to let people go out. And why? I'm not sure. I think there's a danger the government can over-interfere in people's lives.
Yeah. Well, being devil's advocate for a second, I guess that what we've been told is that a second wave could be devastating, for the economy, even more so if it was a V-shaped comeback, which we're all hoping it will be, or whether it's going to be a U-shaped comeback, for example. What we don't want is a sort of a W over the next sort of 2-3 years, which could be even more catastrophic for business. So wouldn't it be better to lock down harder for as long a period as possible now and then slowly bring in the sort of measures that you're talking about?
The answer is there is no correct answer. It's all a question of judgment. So you're absolutely right to bring up the warnings you do. However, on a daily basis, the government are monitoring the number of people who are getting ill and who not. So if we do see a spike beginning, the Prime Minister can immediately say lockdown's begun as of tonight when he makes a speech. So I think he can control the lockdown and he can control the freedom we have to go out there and enjoy ourselves. And of course, we could have a massive lockdown for a long period of time. But the economy will be so devastated that people will get ill and die and not be housed and not have health for other reasons. There'll be no money to pay for it all. So you have got to balance keeping the economy going to keep income coming in, because ultimately the government need taxes to pay for everything. Without the taxes, they can't finance the hospitals, the roads, the trains, all the things the government need to finance, the furloughs. So an idealist can go, shut everything down. But apart from printing money by the zillionfold in a print factory, the government's also got to get the country to the future and get the economy up and running so the economy can in turn finance the needs. So I wouldn't want to be the Prime Minister right now. It's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, it's an impossible job, isn't it? Well, let's just hope that recent gatherings and recent events, I think, a lot of people I'm sensing, and this is just a personal viewpoint, that particularly after the Dominic Cummings scandal that we talked about in last week's show, there seems to be more of a willingness to people go out and kind of think, if it's okay for them, it's okay for me. And I think we're starting to see more and more people congregating in parks, particularly with the amazing weather we've been having. It seems to me that the lockdown is actually starting to crumble a little bit anyway.
I certainly think you're right. Again, I certainly think when you look out and I go out walking in the park, people are clearly gathering in groups they weren't before, and people are clearly walking closer together and hugging and kissing each other and generally hanging out like they were before we had the pandemic. Dominic Cummings is clearly a rogue element. I don't think the whole country can go because one person may have been out of order. And I use the word may have been out of order because depending on what newspaper you read will dictate what your viewpoint is. Because last weekend, the Mail on Sunday were very supportive of Dominic Cummings and talked about how a lot of the accusations were false and were proven to be, and some of the people who made the accusations lied. I still think Dominic Cummings, didn't help himself. He should have apologized quicker for those he offended. But it's not clear if he broke the rules or not. It's a grey area.
So, Carlotta, your second story this week concerns the story that's engulfing the world right now, the protests following the tragic death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Take us through that.
I think all of us, from a personal point of view, and I'm not talking from a professional industry point of view, really from a personal point of view, it is something that it is extremely hard to watch.
Yeah.
Extremely hard. It is something that is unacceptable, really, as a human being. And this goes beyond anything that we do in our lives.
Yeah.
I have been, I've been privileged in the sense that I have been culturally privileged to grow up in a very international school in a very international context. And so for me, it doesn't really matter. Nothing really matters. But I do realize, and it's not only about what is happening with Floyd. There was the other video about that woman in the park at Central Park walking the dog, who is supposedly privileged, has a good job, has been studying, went to university and stuff. So it doesn't really matter what kind of background you come from. I think now for me, it is a human reaction that you should have, regardless of where you are, where you stand, how you've been brought up. And that's that's the first reaction. And that brings along a lot of other considerations, which is, what are we doing? How are we reacting? It's not just about saying, I am disgraced and this is unacceptable, but then we have to do something about it. So everyone in our little households needs to also, basically, even if you have kids, you have to talk to them about this and teach them. And that's the way you change things. Teaching, educating. And then, I think from our end, from the industry and where we sit, which again is privileged because we have the possibility of using a medium that is very powerful. Yeah. And we can use it in a good way. We can use it in a smart way. So I think on our end, it is about accessibility, which is not about inclusion, yes. But the next step is, how accessible do we make our industry? How do we open it up? Yeah. How do we help people get into our industry? Any kind of, any one of us. People with talent should be able to access our industry. People from anywhere should be able to access our industry. So how do we encourage that? And I think that's the way we should encourage, the more diversity, not only in people who work, all of us, but also in the way we tell stories. Because of course, the more diversity you have, for example, I see it every day. I come from I live in London, but I'm not from London. And and bringing something else to the table does change the way we tell stories. Yeah. So we see this. I think that is vital. We have a powerful tool and we can use it. And using that in a good way will eventually educate and bring people to understand how important it is to talk about certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking from a personal point of view, I started this podcast with the aim of trying to ensure it's as inclusive as possible from a diversity perspective. But finding people of colour in senior executive roles in the TV industry is hard, right? And it served to me as a stark reminder of how historically lacking in diversity TV has been.
I think, it's wider than that. It's about getting more people involved and getting people that are not, it's just not just about the color of your skin, but it's about cultures. It's about the background. It's about where you have grown up and how you have grown up. And everybody has something that they can bring to a profession like ours. Yeah. And that's how we tell the stories of people that we are actually filming. Because if you don't understand that, you're never going to be able to tell the right story. So I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's actually been quite encouraging from an industry perspective to see many domestic and international TV companies around the world pledging their commitment to improving the world and the industry we work in over the last couple of days. And I thought it was particularly striking to see many US companies pause operations under an initiative called Blackout Tuesday. And noticeably, Viacom's CBS's channels went dark for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the time in which George Floyd was killed. These included Nickelodeon, CBS Sports, MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, Smithsonian, etc. So I think everyone in the industry has a role to play in increasing opportunities from people from all backgrounds, but it's going to be hard, right? Businesses are going to shrink, lots of jobs are going to be lost, and loads of freelancers are going to have to leave the industry to earn a living. So it's going to be harder than ever to do it. But I think we all have a responsibility to double down and ensure there are more opportunities for people who reflects society as a whole.
Yes.
To get into the industry, both in front of and behind the camera. So now it's time to nominate your hero of the week and who you're going to be telling to get in the bin. Jonathan, who's your hero of the week?
This week, it's Elon Musk. Elon Musk has created this SpaceX project, which clearly is a love and passion. He's done it over 18 years, I read, and he's in his 40s. So he started this when he was in his late 20s or early 30s, but even then, remarkable. And the Crew Dragon capsule has now docked at the International Space Station with the NASA astronauts. NASA financed both him and Boeing to do this. He's done it quicker than Boeing. And you would have thought Boeing, being this extraordinary father of the aviation industry with many more years' experience than Elon Musk, would have been way ahead of in the line. But no, their first attempt to do this failed, and Elon Musk succeeded. And I think fantastic. Give us more Elon Musks.
Yeah, quite extraordinary. And somebody who's got the vision to make humans an interplanetary species as one of their core goals in life is quite an extraordinary person. So good for Elon Musk. And Carlotta, who's your hero of the week?
Yes, so it's hard sometimes because there's a lot of great people out there, and some of them you know about and some of them you don't, unfortunately. But of the ones that did get attention, the one that caught my attention, lately was 9-year-old Tobias Weller. And then Tobias is a hero because he raised money. He raised a lot of money. He started saying, I'll raise this bit, and I'll tell you at the end how much he has raised until now. He has autism and he has cerebral palsy, but this hasn't stopped him from completing a walking marathon completely on, for the only reason of raising money for the NHS. So he started and he said, I'll just raise 3,000 pounds. And now he's at more than 60,000 pounds, which is a great result. I think those are the people we need to look at. It's a little bit, he followed the greatest hero of these months, which was Captain Tom Moore, who we all know about, a 100-year-old war veteran who raised millions, literally millions. And he's a great guy. I see him every once in a while on Good Morning Britain in his interviews. He's phenomenal. And that's the spirit. I think that's the spirit of the heroes that we should be looking at. And it's not about celebs. It's not about Instagrammers. It's about people who are helping other people.
And it's interesting, people from children right the way through to 100-year-old veterans.
Exactly. It's anyone.
Quite remarkable.
And what I think is not about only words. It's not about just, yes, we're here and yes, we're helping you out. It's actions. Those are all the heroes.
Yeah. Here. And Carlotta, who or what are you telling to get in the bin this week?
So this is a struggle, and this is a lifetime struggle. But the what is ignorance for me, and it goes back to the what we talked about earlier, Justin, on the race issues and how people react and how many things we don't know. We continuously have to learn. So the approach in general should be to rid people and societies of ignorance, which is utopia. But it is an enemy. It is becoming an enemy. All violent reactions tend to come out of ignorance. And that is why I call it a villain, and that is why I put it in the bin. And again, I think education and educating, even through entertainment, which is what we are here for, is key. We can do a lot as individuals, of course, as individuals, as people. We can do a lot in the industry to help people understand better, certain things that are to be followed. And why. So that is my general in life putting in the bin something, and that's ignorance.
Yeah. Who couldn't agree with what you're throwing in the bin, Carlotta, this week? And hopefully we can all play a little role in improving things in the months and years ahead.
Hopefully, bit by bit. We started in the past, we will continue.
And Jonathan, who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
Well, without question, the person to get in the bin this week is the Minneapolis police officer who murdered George Floyd. Derek Chauvin. Well, hopefully Derek Chauvin will never see the light of day again. He's been charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, and clearly has been fired. His wife is divorcing him. He's created havoc around the world, this police officer. There is no excuse for what he did to this Black American. I find the stupidity of this white police officer extraordinary, in the sense that everybody knows everyone has cameras on their phones, so it's very easy to take pictures. So that this police officer would kneel on George Floyd's neck in front of other people to take pictures is even more mind-boggling. You'd be so stupid. But I can't imagine that when you're a trainee police officer, your senior police officers don't lecture you about how the way you treat members of the public. I've read that George Floyd was handcuffed, and yet this guy continued to kneel on him, have his knee on his neck when he was struggling. You just don't understand it as what a police officer was doing. He wasn't on his own, he had other police officers with him. So why weren't the other police officers saying to him, stop? I almost think the other police officers are partly responsible because their colleague was behaving in a contemptible manner, but they weren't stopping him. There's no signs on the video footage of the other three police officers moving in to stop their companions. I think all four are to blame. Now, clearly, there's one murderer there, but it is horrific. It is horrific. So, in answer to your question, this Derek Chauvin, ex-police officer, should be discarded forever.
Yeah, quite right. And unfortunately, he joins a long line of other miscreants in American and police forces around the world that have also been responsible for some needless deaths. Jonathan, Carlotta, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. We've obviously talked about a lot of very, very serious issues, and hopefully there'll be brighter days ahead. Thank you again for your time, and hope to have you on the show again sometime in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin.
So it's that time in the show when we get to go over to Hollywood and catch up with Peter White from Deadline. Peter, very odd time over in LA now. Tell us what it's like living in Los Angeles right now.
Hi, Justin. Not quite what I expected when we boarded the plane on March 17th. In the midst of a pandemic, we're experiencing some social unrest at the moment. It is very strange to be right in the middle of it. You see this stuff on TV from the other side of the world, and when you see the police helicopters and you see the what's going on out here, it is very strange. I'm quite close to Santa Monica, so that's probably the closest you've seen. There's some incredible peaceful protesters, and then under the cover of that, you see some bad apples that are causing a bit of trouble. I don't really see this being. I don't see this ending anytime soon. I think there's a lot of way to go. But yeah, it's pretty wild being in the middle of it. And I guess from our point of view, we're sort of covering this from an entertainment point of view. We're speaking on Tuesday, which is Blackout Tuesday. A lot of the entertainment companies certainly here are trying to do their best. Some more than others. Some are just posting stuff to Instagram and Twitter and taking advantage of it as much as they can, and others are trying to do a little bit more. But I think it gets to the heart of all of this, doesn't it? It gets to the heart of the question: is this community being listened to? So we'll see. Yeah, it's a rather strange time to be in Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're all wishing you to stay safe over there. So just going on to the more regular industry news, if there is one in this current climate. But we've been talking the last few weeks about Hollywood reopening slightly. What's the latest on that?
Don't you love that we're talking about some normality in terms of a global pandemic and how we come out of it in terms of production? That's where we are right now. Yeah, it's taken a while. I think, obviously the UK made some announcements over the weekend, and we're starting to get that here in the States. What we've had so far. So, as I said, I'm speaking to you on Tuesday. We had a recommendations from a group which included the studios, which included the guilds, which included producers. You had companies like Disney, Netflix, and CBS. They made their recommendations, and what they've done is they've essentially put together a 22-page proposal, the sort of health and safety guidelines for returning, and they've sent them out to the governors, particularly in LA and New York. So a lot of this stuff is things you would expect. Slightly surprised there wasn't too much detail. There was obvious things like testing, which is a big thing, protective gear for people working on sets, and social distancing. There was a suggestion that virtual writers' rooms are going to stay for some time. They're saying if we can stop that, then that would be good. There was some question marks, obviously, over things like craft services, and it went into a quite detailed approach in terms of things like that. But I think on the whole, it was all stuff that you kind of expected, and we'll see what gets rolled out. We'll see what we're expecting Gavin Newsom to say something any day now. So that's it. And then there's a question as to what gets up and running first. There's particularly over here, you're seeing some individuals. You've got people like Tyler Perry who are doing things in Atlanta. I think Hollywood will start a little bit later than some other places, but it won't be too long before they'll be getting back out onto the sound stages. I know, speaking to a lot of non-scripted producers in the last week, that's probably going to be one of the first things that comes out, because you can do these shows in a way that perhaps scripted struggles a little bit more with. So yeah, we'll see what some of the big first shows are that will be coming back.
All right. Your other story that you've highlighted this week is about another Brit who's made the trip to Hollywood.
This is a far more positive story about Richard Bacon, who I'm sure all your listeners will remember from his Blue Peter days and some of the things that might have happened just after that. He's obviously reinvented himself in the UK. I know he does a lot of work on BBC Radio. But yeah, he's been out here, and he's been out here for some time. I think, he got ill a few years ago, but he's been back and forth. He hosted a show for Nat Geo called Explorer, and he did a bit of work for a syndicated show on Fox. But we broke a story this week that he's got an overall production deal with Universal Television's non-scripted studio, which is the company behind shows like World of Dance and The Wall and Songland, which I thought was really interesting. We see a lot of these overall deals going to the producers you'd expect, really, and Richard getting one of these, to essentially develop and produce ideas for NBC, but also for third-party broadcasters and streamers is interesting. And it just shows, that they do love the Brits out here, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. So I know he's got a couple of shows that he's working on, one in particular for NBC. And last year he got a show away with ABC, which is called The Hustler, something that's outside of this deal. It's being made by Studio Lambert. It's a bit of a mystery game show with Craig Ferguson, who's one of the late night hosts, or was one of the late night hosts over here. So it'll be fascinating to see what he comes up with. And who'd have thought the British breakfast TV was such a gold mine.
Unbelievable.
So we'll see who's next.
Yeah.
We'll see if Gabby Roslin can get herself a first look.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Richard Bacon's story in its own right is got to be worth a scripted series, I would have thought. But let's hope there's some more interesting chapters, and you'll keep us up to date with that. And Peter, you're under curfew now, right? Tell us the situation about literally moving around Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. So each different part of LA is under slightly different curfews. I'm closest to Santa Monica, so we are. As I speak to you now, it's a 2 p.m. curfew, which is a bit wild. Yesterday was a 5 o'clock curfew. The night before was an evening curfew. I think that was 8 p.m. So yeah, we're not really allowed out on the streets, and if they see us, they'll shoo us back in. It's it does make for a pretty strange day being sent home by 2 o'clock. But I guess in some ways, it wasn't like we were leaving the house much before. So no, we'll see. Look, I hope something good can come out of this, and I hope we see some change. But similarly, I hope things can get back to some sort of normal sense soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're all can agree with that. And hopefully you're going to stay safe, and all your friends and colleagues out there are all going to be safe in this time. And we're keeping our fingers crossed that things calm down soon. And as you say, the right sort of change is affected.
I'm not going anywhere, Justin, other than to speak to you and tell you what's going on out here.
All right, fantastic. Well, every week there's something completely unexpected, Peter. So we're hanging on with bated breath until next week.
I think we'll see the locust fly by probably in the next week or two.
Yeah, okay. Well, you heard it here first. Peter, thanks as always. Stay safe, look after yourself, and we'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Justin.
So it's time in the show for our weekly catch-up with K7 Media's Girts Licis. How are you, Girts?
Oh, I'm very well, Justin. Actually, I can reveal a secret to you I have kept from you for 7 weeks.
This is fantastic. Okay, we're all on the edge of our seats here.
Yeah.
What is the secret? What is the secret you're going to be revealing?
My secret is that I'm locked up in my second home in Riga, not in London, as you probably thought I was.
I did. Well, this is the miracle of modern technology that you can be from around everywhere. So we have people this week in LA, we have Riga, we have London, which is how it should be for an international TV industry podcast like this one.
We are really global.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, so this week we're going to be discussing the opportunities in TV brought about by distancing. Tell us about that.
Yeah. All we hear around is, and I know I have mentioned it here on the podcast myself as well, that crisis is a time of opportunities. But obviously there must be many people out of jobs or on lengthy furloughs listening and thinking what you are talking about. You probably just wish to make us feel better, but it doesn't work anymore. I'm not going to be sold on this. So what I want to tell you about today is a few more practical examples from specific projects and genres to technologies and even countries as a whole, where and how the productions, or at least certain stages of productions, can be done safely and innovatively. I realize that there is no one-size-fits-all, of course, but if any of this could help reignite someone's brain to start generating productive ideas of their own to push the ball rolling again, that would be great, don't you think, Justin?
Definitely. I mean, we all need positivity and inspiration right now.
Well, exactly. Well, let's start with some production techniques. And once again, I have to talk about Belgium. As we all know, a lot of big shows have been interrupted midway due to pandemic. And the Belgian version of The Voice Kids has been one of them. Now, the producers have decided on how to proceed with the recording of the season's finale. Since large studio audiences are off the table, a selection of 100 people will be watching the recording and voting from home. But the channel is also further looking into having a limited audience in the studio, seated in separate socially distanced bubbles. So I think this is a good example suggesting that in many situations, a solution doesn't have to be unified. A mix of approaches can be applied to achieve the best results. Audiences, even young viewers, still seem to be ready to follow COVID lockdown stories if they can relate to them. And this can turn out to be a really good way to keep the interest in regular series and its characters burning while the productions are halted. In Belgium, where the Norwegian teen phenomenon scam series have been adapted as WT Fokdown specials are featuring the youngsters from the main series joining viewers in real time as the characters deal with lockdown and communicate via video call. The clips from the show have been extremely popular and have received plenty of positive reactions on the show's social media accounts. Drones can also provide a solution where social distancing is required. A new 18-part series called Behind the Windows have just premiered in Ukraine, looking at the lives of Ukrainians living in self-isolation, with drones used to film from outside the windows of their homes. And each episode was created remotely by a different director, with crew members hailing not just from Ukraine, but from all over the world. And different episodes also cover various genres, from comedy and drama to horror and mystery. And then there is Denmark, where a sing-along show, Sing Along Alone at Home, has become a national phenomenon over the last couple of months with smashing ratings. Think like All Together Now Feel, but without the competition element. But what's extraordinary about this production is that the show is produced by the channel's news department, not experienced entertainment producers, because at the time when the show was greenlit, only news crews were allowed to continue working in Denmark due to lockdown. While those teams may not be as experienced in creating entertainment events, some really interesting creative shifts can occur when teams from one genre are let loose on another. And in this particular case, the result is much less staged and more reactive, in the moment wow kind of the show. But what I particularly want to stress by this, if you are a producer and you don't see a chance to realize the ideas you have been working on so far at the time being, think out of the box. Don't be afraid to look into new genres or hybrid shows, which are becoming particularly popular in some territories like Korea, for instance, usually containing a little bit of talk mixed with variety and indoor, or with cooking, singing, playing, and a competition element.
So there's some really interesting local solutions and examples there. Well, what about if we're looking at the wider world?
Something which is impossible not to notice is that those countries which are among the first to come out of the lockdown are literally racing to offer their services to the rest of the world as safe production sites, as well as other production and post-production facilities, as they see it as a way to revive their local industry, first of all, of course. Iceland, Poland, Serbia, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Czech Republic, Australia, the list is becoming quite long already. And one particular example is New Zealand. The country has launched a campaign this week called Your Creative Business Can Happen Now, rolling it out in Australia, the US, Canada, Ireland, and the UK. So in general, the English as first language speaking world, and targeting particularly smaller productions, not studios, and offering a world-class New Zealand production hub in quite specific sector to art directors still sitting in lockdown overseas with projects to finish, as New Zealand has a good legacy of visual effects, and they are not shy to put it themselves. We are the head, we don't need humans flying in, what we want from you are jobs coming in. There is also more and more talking about virtual production, and that in long term, with technologies advancing further, virtual production and physical production are going to merge in a way that it will be difficult to tell them apart. So basically, virtual production is the process of shooting film or TV within an environment generated by a video game engine, without requiring a significant on-set presence. As a lot of virtual backlots have been already prepared for production of video games, they could potentially be transformed into all kinds of settings, redressed, relit, and used like a production set backdrop necessary. So for instance, a sunset over Eiffel Tower could be filmed whenever, not just in the evening, and without sending actors and crews over to Paris. The crews in this process work remotely with the ability to control lighting and cameras. All this is taking place in real time and viewable live on screen or in 3D through a VR headset. Actors can be motion captured into scenes in real time as well, and directors can oversee filming as it happens, of course. Everything is shot on camera in the same way as with a physical production, making it very easy for adjustments and minimizing the need for extensive post-production.
I think I've seen some examples of that when it comes to sporting arenas, football arenas, remade on the Unreal Engine, I think?
Yes, absolutely. And also in some of the latest studio shows like Mandalorian, for instance. Animation is yet another genre which has remained at full capacity, and the demand has even surged. It comes natural for animators, same as visual effects staff, to work in isolation, forming working groups all around the world. And the spread of the teams actually means that operations can go on 24/7 without interruption. For example, if story and visual development artists and editorials are based in US, but animators are settled in Europe or Asia, the notes can travel between the continents and get responded while the other side is not working. And then when they come back in the morning, they already get results and can move on. I think this is particularly valuable argument for involving production partners across the globe going forward, and not only in animation projects. Voiceover recordings also aren't a problem. Most voiceover artists already have their own recording studio setups at home, and the biggest studios and streamers reportedly have sent personal recording studio kits to their voice actors. each with an iPad, a USB microphone, pop screen, microphone stand, and script stand. With TV production schedules now expected to take about 2 years to get back to full swing, it seems likely that a certain ratio of animation or computer-generated component within a film project could even help to get a production commissioned, as those might be seen as less risky projects in case filming should stop again someday in the future.
Well, there's some pretty bold predictions there, Girts.
Well, if you recall, a few weeks ago, we predicted that the channel-defining soaps will be among the first to be rushed back into production. And now it's been confirmed that the Coronation Street will resume filming in UK next week. And we also talked here on Telecast about not being too harsh on the future perspectives of ad-supported VODs. And at the beginning of this week, the numbers emerged from digital TV research, forecasting that AVOD's revenues are going to double within the next 5 years globally and even triple in the US.
Well, you're becoming the Nostradamus of international TV.
We just
well, that's well, as I say, I'm still waiting on the Container Cup. We're all behind that. We can't wait to see where that lands. Thanks as ever, Girts. Fantastic to have you on the show. Will you be from Riga again next week? Are you in lockdown in Riga?
Kind of. Actually, the flights are resuming slowly. We are opening borders with, I think, almost all Schengen countries in EU, but we are not going to have direct flights back to UK anytime soon. But we can fly to Germany, to Scandinavia, to Paris, to Vienna, and so on.
And are you open for production, TV production over there?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Life is pretty normal.
Well, we'll see things coming back to normal some point soon, all around the world. But as you say, that's quite sobering thought that some TV productions are going to take 2 years to get back into full swing. Again, many of these solutions that you're suggesting, we'll keep our eyes open for those and look forward to hearing more from you next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Girts. Well, that's about it for this week's show. Thanks as always for listening. Don't forget to share the show with friends and colleagues on social media. Keep the messages and suggestions coming in, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We'll be back with another show next week. So in the meantime, stay safe.
Are you tired of the same old streaming options? Introducing Myco, the revolutionary Web3 content platform where you can not only watch films, TV shows, user-generated content, live events, and listen to podcasts, but earn from them too. Myco commissions and produces content that connects and empowers both viewers and creators in a fully decentralized video ecosystem. With live monetization, crowdfunding, NFT gating, and even the opportunity for fractional ownership of content, Myco is changing the game. Myco. Join the conversation and start earning today. Download the app from the Apple and Google Play app stores.